The perfume bottle was in the shoebox on the top shelf, wrapped in an old dish towel. Dorothy's older daughter found it on a Sunday morning in March, while she was reorganizing her mother's closet. Dorothy was at church, which was where she was every Sunday morning by 8:15. Sitting in the same pew she'd sat in for 40 years, third from the front on the left side. Her daughter had come over to aerate the house and sort through some things she'd been putting off, and she'd worked her way through the closet methodically, the way she'd inherited from her mother. The bottle was in a shoebox, tucked behind 2 blankets on the highest shelf. She'd almost missed it. When she lifted it out and turned it over in the light from the hallway, she saw that the original box was still around it. White cardboard, sealed, the small plastic wrap over the cap without a single mark from any fingertip. She carried it to the bedroom, set it on the quilt, sat down in the chair beside the dresser to wait. When Dorothy came home from church and walked down the hall and saw her daughter in that chair, she knew by the look on her daughter's face that something had been found. She came into the bedroom and saw the bottle on the quilt. She stopped. Her daughter asked what it was. Dorothy said it was a perfume she'd been given 13 years ago that she'd never opened. Her daughter asked why. Dorothy said, "Hold on." She went to the closet, reached past her winter coats to the back of the shelf, brought out the small spiral notebook she'd been keeping since the year she received the bottle. Dorothy Mae Walker was 68 years old and had worked in commercial laundry her whole adult life, starting at a hotel linen service in New Orleans when she was 19 years old. She'd pressed shirts, folded sheets, sorted uniforms by size and stain, hauled loads from washers to dryers to carts to the delivery area. She'd done this for 45 years, at the same company for 32 of them. Her hands showed it in the way hands do, thick across the palms, knuckles that had never fully softened back, a redness along her fingers that soap and time hadn't taken away. She'd retired at 64 with her Social Security and a small pension from the hotel chain, and she'd moved into the quiet that she'd been working toward without ever quite naming it. She lived in the house in the Gentilly neighborhood that she and her husband Curtis had bought in 1989, a double shotgun on a block of big leaf oaks that dropped leaves every fall and shaded the porch every summer. Curtis had passed in 2019. Her 2 daughters, both in the city, came to dinner most Sundays. She went to church every week. She had a neighbor named Miss Ernestine on the left side and a young couple on the right who kept their yard well and waved when they saw her. What her daughters didn't know, what nobody in her life knew, was that Dorothy had $7,280 in a credit union account on Canal Street that Curtis had never known about and that existed only for her. 13 years of saving a little every time. Before the rest, the bottle had been a gift from her older daughter for her 55th birthday. It was a real perfume, the kind she'd seen in glass cases in department stores and passed by her whole life without going in. In the small box with ribbon on it, her daughter had put a note in her own handwriting. "Mama, open it when you have something real to celebrate." Dorothy had smiled that evening in the living room with the cake and the family around her, set the bottle on the dresser when they left. And later, after the house emptied out and she washed the dishes and turned off the lights, she'd sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the bottle in the dark for a long time. What would be real? What would be worth calling a real celebration? She thought about her grandmother. Her grandmother had lived in the 9th Ward in a house that was smaller than this one, and older and more tired in its bones, with 6 people in it most of the time. Dorothy remembered visiting as a girl and there always being a coffee can in the back of the pantry, on the low shelf, just sitting there. Not a can with a label that said money, just a coffee can that had been a coffee can first, and was something else now. Her grandmother would go to it some mornings and take something out or put something in quietly before anyone else was moving in the kitchen. Dorothy had asked once, when she was 9 or 10, where that money came from. Her grandmother had turned from the pantry and said, "Easy as saying good morning. I take out a little before I spend the rest, baby. Just a little, every time." Dorothy had been 9. She didn't think much about it then. It seemed like a small thing, the kind of thing old people said, part of the ordinary furniture of her grandmother's house that she filed away without examining. But at 55, sitting on the edge of the bed with a sealed bottle on the dresser, and the house quiet around her, something very old surfaced. She remembered those exact words, the way her grandmother had said them without looking up from what she was doing, like it was just the truth, and everybody knew it. "I take out a little before I spend the rest. Just a little. Every time," she decided, sitting there that night. She would open the bottle when she had $8,000 saved, a number she wrote on a piece of paper and stared at for a while before she folded the paper and put it in the notebook on the nightstand. $8,000 seemed like a mountain from where she stood, but if she took out a little before the rest, every time, the way her grandmother had done it for 50 years with nothing but a coffee can and a habit, maybe she could get there. If you've read this far, you already feel what Dorothy felt that night, sitting up with a number she'd written down that seemed too far to reach. The distance between choosing a number and having the number is everything. Stay until the end. The following Monday, she opened an account at a credit union on Canal Street, different from the bank she used for checking. She put $80 in it that same day. That was what was left from the extra ironing work she'd taken on the month before, money that hadn't found its way into anything else yet. She didn't tell Curtis, not because it was a secret, because there was nothing worth telling yet. A promise made to yourself doesn't need a witness to keep. The months that followed, she set aside what she could see before it mixed into the household money. Some months it was $50, some months $120, on the months when she picked up Saturday shifts at the linen service when they were short-staffed. The slow months, nothing went in. She didn't get anxious about it. She waited for the month to turn. She wrote the amounts in the spiral notebook. Date, amount, running total. The notebook stayed with the bottle in the shoebox. Curtis never asked about the credit union account. He wasn't the type to look through her papers, and she wasn't the type to look through his. They'd worked that way their whole marriage. It was trust, not distance. By the fall of 2017, 6 years in, she had $2,840. That October, her older daughter's car broke down. The repair estimate was $1,400, and the car had to be back on the road for school runs. Her daughter had nothing saved and a child to get across town every weekday morning. Dorothy sat at the kitchen table with the phone in her hand. She had the money. She knew she had it, but she also had the bottle on the shelf and the number she hadn't reached and what she knew about herself, which was that if she started touching the savings for things that other solutions existed for, she would never stop, because there was always going to be something. She called her younger daughter. She put in $500 without question. Dorothy called her longtime friend from the church choir, a man named Brother Tate, who told her more than once that she only needed to ask. He helped. Dorothy picked up a Saturday overtime shift that she turned into cash by the following Thursday. Her older daughter got the $1,400. Nothing came from the credit union. That night, Dorothy sat in the kitchen after dinner. Curtis was watching the game in the living room. She thought about her grandmother's coffee can, about how her grandmother had never, as far as Dorothy knew, gotten anywhere near $8,000. Probably never anywhere near 800 at one time. But the can had always had something in it, and that something had made a difference in ways that nobody had ever fully explained to Dorothy, but that she'd seen the results of in small emergencies handled without panic, in a train ticket bought when a relative needed family nearby. Dorothy understood sitting there that the number wasn't the main thing. The main thing was the little bit every time before the rest went out. The number was the reason. The habit was what mattered. She kept saving. She'd watched her grandmother add small bills to a coffee can all her life. She thought it was just an old woman's habit. It was the only rule that mattered. When Curtis got sick in the spring of 2018, the expenses were serious. His illness had been building without making much noise, and by the time the doctors named it, the treatment was already going to be substantial. Dorothy spent money she had and borrowed money from people who offered and used whatever the insurance covered. When Curtis passed in January of 2019, the funeral and the remaining medical bills together were more than she'd anticipated. She used $3,000 from the credit union account to close the gap on what nothing else could cover. The balance dropped to under $1,000. She didn't stop saving. She started over. Same way, slower at first, because the pension alone was less than what she'd had when Curtis was alive and contributing. But she'd learned to calculate around what she was going to put aside before anything else. So she put aside a smaller little bit before the rest, and the rest was what remained. Through 2020 and 2021, some months she put in nothing. The pandemic had done what it did to expenses and to the particular anxiety that lives in a house where someone is alone. She didn't move what was already saved. She waited. When things settled, she picked up again. By the spring of 2024, her notebook showed $7,280, not $8,000, not yet, but closer than she'd ever been to any number she'd set for herself. Her daughter turned the pages of the notebook slowly on that Sunday morning in March. 13 years of entries in the same small handwriting. Some months a number, some months a dash. The quiet, unannounced discipline of someone who'd made a promise to herself in private and kept it in private because she didn't need an audience to hold. She looked up at her mother. Dorothy said, "I'm still working toward the number." Her daughter set the notebook down, looked at the bottle on the quilt, looked at her mother. Something moved across her face. She said, "Mama, you've had this bottle 13 years." Dorothy said, "I know it." Her daughter picked up her phone, sent a message to her sister. Her sister called back in 4 minutes, asked what was happening. The older daughter explained. A short quiet on the line. Then the younger daughter said, "I'm sending money right now. $200, then $300 more, after she checked her account." The older daughter's husband, who could hear this from the next room, came in and asked what the number needed to be. He opened an app, transferred the rest. Dorothy opened the credit union app on her phone with her daughter watching. $8,025, more than the number. Over the line she'd written down in the dark 13 years ago. She sat down on the bed, picked up the bottle, held it in both hands. 13 years, Curtis's illness, his death, the car repair, the pandemic months, the slow months, the month she'd had to use the 3,000, the starting over, the quiet adding every time before the rest, and this bottle sealed through all of it. She handed it to her older daughter, said, "You open it." Her daughter took it, turned the gold cap gently. The smell came out into the room, something floral and warm, something that had been waiting a long time. It filled the small bedroom in a way that felt like an arrival. Her younger daughter, still on the phone, asked what was happening. The older one held the phone up toward the open bottle and said, "Mama just opened her perfume." There was a sound on the line that wasn't quite laughing and wasn't quite crying. Dorothy took the open bottle back, held it close, eyes closed. She thought about her grandmother, the coffee can in the pantry, the small bills added in quietly. A little before the rest, every time. Her grandmother had never reached $8,000, probably never got to 800 at one time. But that can had always had something in it, and that something had always been enough when it needed to be. Dorothy had gotten to 8,000, 13 years. She'd gotten there. The window was cracked open, and the March air from the street came in slow and warm, carrying something that smelled like wet oak leaves and the neighborhood waking up on a Sunday after church. She held the open bottle a moment longer. The way you hold something you've been keeping a long time. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon after service let out, Dorothy was on her way to the grocery store on Elysian Fields when she passed the small courtyard outside the old community center, where people sometimes sat on the low wall and waited for rides. A woman was sitting alone on the wall. 50s, maybe a few years younger, a canvas bag over her shoulder. She was looking at something in her hands, a bill or a printout, and the way she was looking at it Dorothy recognized without needing to study it. She knew that look. She'd worn it herself. Dorothy stopped on the sidewalk. She thought about her grandmother standing at the pantry door. She thought about the little bit added before the rest. She thought about how long it had taken her to understand a thing her grandmother had known her whole life and said out loud more than once. But that hadn't landed until Dorothy was 55 in the dark with a sealed bottle on her dresser. She went and sat down on the wall beside the woman. She said, looking forward at the street, "My grandmother used to take out a little before she spent the rest, every time, just a little. Not what was left over. Before. She did it her whole life and I didn't understand what she was doing until I was 55. The woman lowered the paper in her hands. Dorothy continued, "I started doing it when I was 55. 13 years later, I reached the number I'd chosen. I don't have more than I need, but I have what I set out to have, because of something that didn't cost anything except deciding to do it in the right order." The woman said, "How much is a little?" Dorothy said, "Whatever you can see before it disappears into everything else. Could be $20, could be 50. But you take it out first, before the rent, before the groceries, before anything. You put it somewhere else. And when something hard comes up, and something hard always comes up, you find another way first, and you let what you saved stay where it is." The woman folded the paper in her lap, sat with that for a moment. Dorothy stood up, straightened her jacket. She said, "That's it. Your grandmother probably knew it too. Most of our grandmothers did." She walked on toward the store, and walking down the block with her canvas bag, she thought about the way things like this travel. Not through banks or classes or any of the systems set up to talk about money, through a courtyard wall, through a kitchen where a grandmother stands at a pantry, through a sentence said easily to a granddaughter who isn't ready to hear it yet, said again in the dark 30 years later to herself, one woman at a time, generation to generation, however long it takes to land. There is a rule about money that nobody puts in any book, not because it's complicated, because it's simple. And the simple things are the ones nobody explains, because everyone assumes everyone already knows. It isn't what's left over. It's what you choose first. Just a little, every time. Dorothy's grandmother knew it. Dorothy learned it. Now you know it. If this story stayed with you, share it with a woman you know who's still waiting for something to be left over before she starts. Tell her it doesn't work that way. It has to come first. Subscribe and hit the bell. Every week there's a new story here, made for women like you and like Dorothy. A simple like helps this story reach someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for staying until the end.